Your bar is currently #1 in the global top 500 bars ranking. What does this kind of recognition mean to you and your team?
Yeah, winning #1 of the top 500 bars was, it took a while to let that sink in, but it was just amazing, from a bar from Scotland, the team just showing how well they work, but also Panda and Sons being 12 years old, it shows, you don't have to be a shiny new toy as long as you're being consistent, keep pushing, and doing what you believe in, you get the recognition. So it was amazing. It was good.
Do you think this will change the atmosphere in the bar, or will Panda and Sons stay the same hidden vintage barbershop behind the shop front?
Yeah, we will still stay the same in terms of our feel of the bar. But look, of course, there's an impact with people, probably tourists coming in, really wanting to come in. The locals don't care so much about these accolades. But ever since even like 50 Best awards, we found there's been a larger portion of tourism coming in. So, but again, we still stay true to ourselves. We're not going to change things by peer pressure. We're just going to keep doing what we believe in.
The Alto's Bartender's Bartender Award is voted on by your peers. Is this kind of recognition different for you compared to traditional rankings?
Yeah, I think winning the Alto's Bartender's Bartender Awards 50 Best last year was great because, as I said, it's peer voted. So from my other respected bartenders from around the world. So that one meant a lot because I always believe bartenders really understand what a bartender is because we know each other's jobs better than anyone. So that meant a lot to me because there's so many good candidates out there. To be chosen again from Scotland was a very proud thing.
Do awards create pressure to keep innovating, or do they motivate you to simply continue doing what you do?
Yeah, I think I need pressure to keep pushing because sometimes if you don't have it, you maybe become too complacent or relaxed. And, I think for a long time I always looked at why good bars no longer were good after 5, 6, 7 years. But I think a lot of time is they haven't kept evolving, keep pushing. And, you need to keep true to your USP of what you are, but you need to keep improving everything. So this adds more pressure, but I think that's a good thing for us.
Your work with freezing, sub-zero mixology, is iconic today. What was the original question or problem that led you to this approach?
Actually, it was for our second bar, Hoot the Redeemer, that's no longer there. We closed that in January, but back in 2014, I had a lucid dream, and the dream was of the film Big with Tom Hanks, and one part of the film was, ice cream. So I wanted to make cocktail ice cream. And I know I could look at YouTube videos. There wasn't ChatGPT then, so, Google search. But I could follow a copy something, but I wanted to really understand it because I like to really fully understand everything. So I studied in University of Reading, so science of ice cream, but then your Italian friends tell you gelato is different, it's better. And, I was very naive back then. I was like, okay. So then actually I checked and there was a gelato university in Bologna, Italy. So I studied there. But both of them, I thought it'd be very fun, like making ice cream from the first minute. But actually there was a lot of classroom environment science behind freezing. It's not just to freeze things, there's flavor process, marrying process. And from a bartender's brain, I suddenly realized there's more we could do as bartenders with freezing for flavor.
And what is the next boundary you want to push? Where do you see unexplored territory?
I think it's pun intended, but there's tip of the iceberg. I think actually we've only just scratched the surface of what we can achieve with freezing for flavor. So I want to keep pushing that because, we look at the best chefs and the best restaurants and try and adapt techniques, which is good, but we can do so much more as bartenders of liquids with freezing than the kitchen. So it's been a double-edged sword past couple of years because obviously the demand for me to travel and teach what we've done so far has been great because I'm helping other bartenders think in a different approach, but it's not giving me time to make more new techniques. So actually, after Prague, I'm going to have at least a few months to be at home to really try and turn our theories into practice and really do a lot of R&D. So hopefully next year, we should be coming up with a couple more for the community.
How can freezing or extreme temperatures change flavour?
I think the main difference by using freezing for flavour is like, okay, you have a strawberry. When you cook it, it still tastes good, but a cooked strawberry tastes very different to a fresh strawberry. The flavour profile changes. But with freezing, we maintain the fresh aspect of the flavour because we're not cooking off the acids, the delicate flavours. So what we're doing is we're amplifying the fresh flavour notes rather than cooking and changing it. So this is kind of my best way of describing the main difference between heat and cold.
Can you give an example of a cocktail where temperature made a major difference?
Yeah, cocktails. Well, we use one of our techniques, suppression, which means under pressure, which is our freezing alternative to sous vide. And I think a really good one we do is a kind of a take on a Bobby Burns, but we add Scottish cherries into it. And by it macerating with the freezing process of the cherries, you get this delicious kind of winter notes. But again, that fresh cherry as opposed to the cooked cherry, but it really kind of complements the whiskey and the sweet vermouth.
You often describe the bar as a laboratory. What are you currently testing or researching at Panda and Sons?
Yeah, currently, we have two creative spaces. One in Pandas and one I've got a larger space for myself, and it's this one. So actually we call it the Brain Melting Society. And right now we're really trying to understand, we call it freeze grilling, because we're thinking, well, I was thinking one day you touch something very hot, you get a blister, but also if you touch something very cold, you also get a blister. So we're like, okay, there's something here of extreme temperatures. So we're thinking now making on these really cold, basically like ice cream plates, like, making maybe a kiwi fruit paste, freeze grilling for 5 minutes on one side, then 5 minutes. We know it'll make a change in the flavor, but we're not sure if it'll be substantial or also is it going to be effective to use in the cocktail menu day to day. But this is what we're trying to do right now.
And when does this laboratory turn back into a place of hospitality? Where do science and bar culture meet?
Well, that's the thing. So, they're very separate from there's a separate room for this. I guess, like Alma, they have their separate lab as well. But for us, even though we're doing techniques and all I do is talk about techniques, actually, it's a very small part of what is important to us. Because I think sometimes you go to some bars, they're too hyper-focused on one thing, like maybe techniques. Whereas we tell everybody, music, speed of service, friendly service, perfect, consistent cocktails, repeat customers, uniform, environment, and then, of course, techniques and cocktails. They're all part of a larger machine. So you need to make sure you're ticking all the boxes. So it's weird, we are unique in our techniques, but it's just as important as everything else for us.
We're seeing a return to simple, clean cocktails, smaller menus, and more clarity. Is Panda and Sons part of this shift?
We have been, but actually now I've been trialing a lot with going back to our beginnings. So sometimes we look too far ahead. Now we're doing our new techniques, but as I said before, we started with ice creams and sorbet, so that's where I learned. So we're starting to go back to maybe more nostalgic style cocktails, I guess creamy ones. So we're looking at Coke float style drinks, scropinos, blended ice cream drinks. So I'm really trying to focus a lot on this to see what we can do. So I guess it's kind of maybe going the opposite direction now. Because I guess if everyone is doing the same style, it shows that everyone understands the trend, but I think sometimes you need to break the trend as well to help steer people to diversify the style of cocktails.
Where do you think innovation in bars is heading? More technology or a return to traditional craftsmanship?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think, what's the future for bartending? Cocktails, look, I think that most of the bars want to do the minimal style, but, even my favorite cocktail bars are like Schofield, Satan Whiskers that do classic style cocktails, very much trained with the Sasha Petrasky era of milk and honey. But so I always tell people, look, we can't all be doing the same thing because if we all do I love a burger, but I don't want to go to every restaurant and have a burger. And that's one style, we need to have not just Japanese, there's teppanyaki, there's sushi, ramen, etc., yakitori. So we need to make sure everyone's following what they believe and love the most. So for us, of course, it's freezing techniques, but we need to have more diversification. Like Hampus from Røde is doing incredible things with individual flavors and making it very multi-layered, very much trained in the 3-star Michelin environment, which he has been. So we need a lot more people pushing, Line from Athens taking fermentation to the next level. So we need more people pushing boundaries in different directions.
When you create a new cocktail, do you start with flavour, technique, a story, or a problem you want to solve?
I think it's a combination of all these things, like you said, problem solving, technique, story. I think it really depends base to base, but for us, right now we want to create new techniques. And then once we have a technique, we then try and push, like stress test it. What can we achieve and what can't we not achieve with the new technique? And then we take it from there.
Where do you look for inspiration when you don't want to just make a new drink, but create something really new?
Yeah, I take a lot of inspiration from a lot of places. Like, actually, when I was a very young bartender, 2007, 8, Ryan Chetty was my supervisor, and he's gone on to do, World's Best Bar, Dandelion, then became Lioness, Silver Lion, just opened a second seed library in New York. I think what they do is very crazy. They've got, they're making a fermentation or the filtration in a bladder at the moment. I think for one of the drinks, they did a pig's blood, orange curacao style cocktail. As I said, line fermentation, Hampus, VJ with his indigenous ingredients. So we look at what other people are doing, and not necessarily the style of cocktail, but we'll look at glassware, maybe steps of service. But for us, we want to keep pushing our techniques. But even though we get inspired by people that use our techniques, actually. So it's actually sometimes, even though we've created the technique, doesn't mean we know everything about it, or doesn't mean we've made it the most efficient. So actually, a lot of bartenders will be like, hey, I'm using your technique, but we've changed this one step this way. And then we're like, actually, that's a better way of doing it. So it's good for me or to inspire each other. I think the transparency is a good thing, knowledge sharing. So yeah, there's multi-layers of inspiration, but for us it's just to keep pushing the techniques of freezing.
What failed experiment shaped you the most?
Actually, I read a long time ago there was a patent for this person in America that made powdered alcohol. So you add this powder, maybe a mojito into water, and then it's a mojito, or gin powder, and then it becomes gin. And I immediately thought he was using a freeze dryer. So I put gin, tequila, rum in the freeze dryer, and then usually the cycle takes 9 to 30 hours, 35 hours. But this was 7 days. The machine was still going, and then it died on me. So people give me explanations of how he's done it now, but I kind of lost interest in this because it was a very expensive mistake. But I actually talk a lot about failures. Actually, it's never really failures. This one hurt because it costs a lot of money. But actually, usually for us, when we don't succeed, we know we've gained knowledge and we know we've come a step closer to achieving what we want, or a step closer to realizing it's not going to work. So either or, we always tell people that the failure is not failure because you're gaining knowledge, and gaining knowledge is a positive.
Panda and Sons has a strong identity, the barbershop theme, the family story, the humour. How did this world come together?
Multi things. Panda is my nickname, so that I wanted to kind of put my name to this. But the and Sons was actually a homage to my family. So my grandfather and uncles had a shop called McPherson and Sons, which was a very famous grocery shop in north of Scotland. And they closed a couple of years before I opened, so I wanted to keep a homage to the legacy that they had created. So that's why I kept the and Sons for this. But then, yeah, the Pandas thing, we just realized there's so much we can play with this. I guess me studying marketing to a certain level definitely has benefited us now in terms of how we do the branding. And, we're very lucky because black and white goes with any color as well. People generally like pandas, even though we're silly, stupid animals. So, no, it's a good thing. I didn't realize actually how much love there is for pandas when we came up with this idea. But actually another reason was the year we opened, the pandas came to Edinburgh Zoo. But actually they've left last year? Yeah, last year. So now we're the only pandas left in Edinburgh.
Is there something people don't realise about the Scottish bar scene until they experience it?
Yeah, actually, Scottish people are funny people, we're very proud people, but we don't like giving each other too many compliments. Or actually, when we do, we insult each other as a way of love. But also, you'll see that in all the bars. When I go to many other cities, you'll see an underlying theme of all the bars, maybe one ingredient or a style of cocktail. But when you go to Edinburgh, every bar is completely different concept, different drinks program. So that you find a very diverse bar scene. And actually, what people don't know a lot about Edinburgh was how old the cocktail scene is. So when New York had that renaissance in the early 2000s, especially Sasha Petrasky really pushing this. Then soon after this, actually Edinburgh was after. It was probably the second city to really adopt this. And then London. London would come up to Edinburgh to see and get inspired by Edinburgh. So actually we were a lot more mature market than even London in this renaissance we see in the past 20 years.
That was another episode of the Visit Chef magazine podcast, featuring a conversation with Iain McPherson. You can find all episodes in our archive at visitchef.com/podcast, as well as on all major podcast apps. Feel free to contact us, we'd love to hear from you. We'll be back with a new episode soon, and we're already looking forward to having you with us again.